Hey, Alex. Alex, let's
Yeah.
book a vacation.
Why?
Get it? Get it? Puns. Okay.
And this is why we're friends.
It was it was more entertaining the first time when I said it without sound.
You had to be there. With that, welcome to this month's episode of the 800s. I am your humble co-host Alex Neater from my humble co-host Adam, and a shout out to our not so humble man behind the screen, Alan, who makes it happen. Thank you very much. As always, why don't we just jump right into our plugs? We can start talking about this here book.
Sure thing. I'll plug right away.
Yeah,
All
he's on it
right. If you
today,
join,
guys. He's on it today.
yeah, yeah, I'm on something. um, if you joined us for a brief pre-show, you might not have, but might have heard some music that was Fearless First from Incompetech. You should go to filmmusic.io to check out more music from Incompetech. They have a lot of scores and different selections for your audio pleasures. If this is the first time you are joining us today, I want to say welcome and head over to dmstable.com for all the info you could ever want about us. There you'll find certain links such as dmstable.com/audible, where you can pick up a 1 month free subscription to Amazon's audiobook platform Audible, which is my preferred method of experiencing these books. You can also find a link there, which is dmstable.com/Etsy, where we sell cool nerd memorabilia like 3D prints and cool graphics. Check that out if you'd like to support us or just pick up some cool nerd stuff. Another way that we support this show is Patreon. The link is below your video, but we are the DM's Table on Patreon. And the lowest subscription level there is just $2, which gets you the ability to vote on what book we read next. A very handy thing to keep this show running smooth as butter. Other links that you might be interested in are our socials, such as Facebook and X. On Facebook, we're at the DM's Table, and on X, we are at DM's Table. Hit us up there to keep in the loop. And if you're looking for a little more intimate connection with us, might I suggest you hit us up on our socials for our Discord link. There we talk about all things nerd, not just books, but 3D printing, nerd culture, whatever strikes the fancy. We are a crowd waiting for you. Hit us up on our socials for that link. Well,
Also, what?
I think I hit pretty much everything there. Did you have another thing to plug?
Not something to plug, but I just wanted to say thank you for those who do keep up with us on our socials, but we don't hit anybody.
Okay.
It sounded funnier in my head. My bad. Oh, anywho, so why don't I then jump into what we are reading this month? So this month on the 800s, we will be discussing our beach read pick, The People Who Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, who has had our beach read pick twice in a row. Poppy has accomplished her dreams. She moved out of her little town in Ohio to Chicago and eventually to NYC. Her personal travel blog grew until she was hired to travel the world and write about vacationing for a high-end travel magazine. She has a nice place, comfortable living, and mentorship under an excellent boss. So why does she feel so empty? Poppy sets out to find what she's lost between her summer vacations with her former best friend Alex. And it turns out we can learn a lot from the people we meet on vacation.
If this is your first time joining us on the show, let me give you the expectations moving forward. Our show is a discussion show. How that works is Alex or myself will pose a topic for discussion. Chat after we pose this topic. Feel free to give your own thoughts in chat. Alex and myself will talk amongst each other to give you guys a chance to type up your responses, and then we'll look at chat, see if anybody has anything interesting to say about the topic, and give notable comments a shout out, as well as look for additional topics of discussion. So if you have anything you would like to talk about the book at any time, feel free to throw that up in chat. We're keeping an eye out, keeping an eye on chat, making sure we grab those topics or questions for discussion. So that's it. That's the way the show works, and the most funnest way this show works is with audience participation.
Also, what makes this show so fun is over at DMCA, we're trying to create fun and accepting culture where people can feel free to enjoy and participate in all the things that they love without fear of any sort of teasing or judgment or anything like that. Also, this is a show for adults. We cover adult situations, topics, and such, and while we try not to swear too much, it does happen. Case in point, as we say around here, be nice or fuck off.
Nice foghorn there.
I thought it might be nice. I was thinking like vacations, cruises, you know.
Okay. I see what you're laying down there. All right, with that,
Even though
let's jump
there's
in
not
with our...
any of those in this book, but still.
Yeah. I mean, they were in a beachy area one time. There could have been one passing by
on the horizon. All right, so
let's jump right in. What were your first impressions?
First impressions are not to do too much comparing, but like we've had this author before, as I said. This author definitely has a very specific voice, and it came through right from the beginning of this book. Like I instantly recognized it as Emily Henry's writing. There's a lot of excellent description, like probably I would say like her greatest strength as a writer is her ability to describe the way it feels to experience something that is being experienced either visually, auditorially, whatever. Like her ability to describe experience is excellent, and that's apparent from the very beginning. But I felt from an early stage that the main protagonist and the very apparent love interest, Alex, were essentially just like they fell into a lot of the very same tropes as the last one that we read, Happy Place. Like it just, there was a voice, but there was also it went beyond voice to like it felt like it was another stamp out of a template a little bit in the beginning. So I was a bit hesitant going into this one, but you'll find out what I thought as we move on. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, for first impressions, I definitely agree with you and Via Strake here. There's a very distinctive tone to the voice that is native to Emily Henry. She does a really good job expressing her voice and kind of lulling you into the story and getting you in that relaxed mode of, just experiencing the story and not worrying too much about it. I will say right off the bat, I was like, okay, why aren't they friends anymore? Like that felt like a key bit of information to have at the beginning, and we don't get that until the very end. But there's obvious reasons for that, but for me, it felt like a sticking point, and I was worried.
That was one of the things that I
moving forward.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. You had paused on mine. I lost audio for a second there, so I thought you'd finished your thought. But I I think that points to exactly what I meant about things fitting a very particular template, because this was the exact same thing that happened in the other book. Was there's like, here's this major point of contention that we're going to put right at the beginning of the book, but we're not going to explain till the very end, and we're going to dance around it the entire time. you know and
Yeah.
It's a fairly common trope, not just for this book. Like, it's not my favorite trope personally. um but I will give Emily Henry credit. I think she went about it in a slightly different way as the book went on, but like that setup was felt very similar to me.
My big qualms with it is like we didn't know the degree of their falling out. So like was it, oh, they just grew apart and stopped chatting? Did they have a fight and then it just kind of escalated from there, and before they knew it they weren't talking anymore? Did one of them sleep with the other one's significant
Mhm.
other? There's a lot
Yeah,
of degrees of fighting here that could have set up the tension for their re-meet that we don't really get to find out until the
yeah,
end.
yeah. I kind of guessed it right from the beginning, not to like, poo-poo it or like
Yeah.
I'm psychic or anything. It's just like it follows a very typical rom-com type of trope of, we're going to make this seem like this was the biggest thing in the world, but really it's we can't express our feelings to each other. But I think V.S. Drake hit the nail on the head. It's not a strong hook for tension when it is undermined by the exact things that you outlined, Adam, that we don't know what it is. We don't know how big it is. We're just like, oh, they haven't talked in 2 years. She wants to reach out, but she daren't. She mustn't. And all we get is
Well,
these mentions of the vacation in Croatia. That's all we get, and I think the only tension that you get there is like, all right, I know that this isn't going to be resolved until I hear about Croatia. That's about it.
all right, let's talk about V.S. Drake's topic. The timeline jumps in the book. What did you think of that style?
That's the part that I mentioned where I think she went about it a little bit in a little bit of a different way that I actually kind of enjoyed. It's one of the things that I think she did better in this book than in Happy Place. Is she she did these stories in a purposeful order, but you didn't understand the purpose of the order until the end. So it was like filling out a puzzle in a way, where the last piece is this like critical bit that just ties it all together. And I thought that was way better done in this one than the other one, because she had, again, this is a part of her style. She very much likes to put the tension at the front and then kind of go backwards in and out of like present time, past time. But it felt a little haphazard before, and this felt a little more purposeful, which I appreciated. What about you?
Yeah, it was really organized, and like looking at the chapters, you can see the, like if you just look at the chapter list, which I did near the beginning, I was like, oh, I see what's going on here with the time shifts. I wonder how this progresses. And I looked at the chapter list and I'm like, yeah, that gives you a good anticipation build throughout the book where you're like, okay, I'm definitely going to find out what happened on the mystery vacation. And in the meantime, the story obviously progresses at a good pace. I liked how she did it, minus the caveat of there was no tension at the beginning because we didn't know what happened. But
Yeah.
I feel like she did an excellent job of, building up the background and explaining stuff through time jumps. That stuff was pretty good.
I thought the structure was better for sure. Unfortunately, V.S. Drake, I don't think it can qualify as author growth, because People We Meet on Vacation was released in 2021, and Happy Place came out in 2023. So
Ooh.
I think it, uh, I
She
think it's
peaked.
just, maybe there's another book in between that we haven't read yet. So, book lovers, ironically, right?
I think I think she just tried two different things with each
Yeah,
book, and one
one
worked better
worked,
than the other.
and that's totally fine. Like I appreciate an author that knows their voice and is willing to like kind of experiment. Some stuff hits better than others for sure. Um, but to that end, did you have a favorite jump cut, like specifically for what it did for the story, other than like let's leave the Croatia one out as its own thing because we'll talk about that. But aside from that, like pivotal one, what was your favorite like vacation jump shot?
But that
Uh,
was my favorite. No, I'm just kidding. I really liked the jump where they brought along their significant others. Um, it showed you the main character's vulnerability. You got like a little bit of glimpse into their true motives. Um, and they were kind of the most honest with each other in that one, I think,
mhm.
compared to any of the other ones. What do you think? What was your favorite?
This one was I know gave the question, but this one was actually a tough one for me that I had been thinking about since I like finished this book. I agree the couples one was a big one for sure. Plus, my heart goes out to Italy, like considering my personal heritage. Um, Honestly, I liked the first one, though, like the description of the first one, the one that sets the tone for like what these mean to her, like what we get our first glimpse into what ends up being her ultimate realization at the end. Like that first little bit, we find out the format for these vacations, and I think it sets the tone for the dynamic that these characters have pretty decently well between them. It I don't always like what the dynamic is, but it's a good. It's I thought it was a very good setup piece. So their first vacation together, I liked it because it wasn't some like grandiose thing. It was just like, hey, we both kind of want to get out of here. um, Want to
Yeah,
come with?
VS
Sure.
VS Drake liked the Arizona trip. It was the climax of tension and release. It just felt really good.
Um, I don't know that I felt the same way about that scene. At least not as much of a climax. I mean, obviously, we're leaving out the one that fills in the blanks the most, and that
Yeah.
kind of has its own building of tension and release of tension. But that's true. That is a good scene where they talked about the Millennial. Uh, I like I did like Arizona a fair amount, but it felt a little overshadowed by its placement between some major parts in the present vacation. You know, for me, because that's if I remember correctly, that comes pretty close to where they um, things get a little hot and heavy. So, or at
Close,
least,
close, but
yeah. So,
close, but no burn.
yeah. Well, Arizona, they do it. Maybe I'm conflating a couple things in this book because like some of the vacations they kind of blur together a little bit in the middle, and I might be misconstruing what I'm thinking about then because I didn't think. Oh, Palm Springs. That's the present. was talking about specifically the flashbacks, and Palm Springs is in California.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
I thought
So
I was just not remembering one.
no, it's all good. Um, no, I wanted to like those are the two things that I wanted to keep separate was like the present day one and the Croatia one because they have yeah, I mean the present day one is fun is fun, but like I'd like to say that as its own separate topic. But you know, if you have a different vacation that you have that's a fave that is like a flashback, let us know. Um, fair enough, via Drake.
The
Yeah,
rest were okay.
yeah,
All right, let's move on. Let's move on.
fair enough.
Let's talk about character growth. What did you think about? Let's just focus on the two main characters because we don't get a ton of pictures of the other characters. But what did you think of the two main characters' character growth?
Character growth specifically, um,
Yep.
I thought I liked elements of both of their growth, but I despised other parts of it. Um, uh, because some of it felt like a little bit railroady for the characters. Um, I think Poppy, like her personal growth, the stuff that happens outside of the context of her relationship with Alex, I think is arguably the best like personal growth in the entire series. Is her realizing her connection to her job. Like honestly, this is one of the things I have to point this out. One of the things that I think was done so much better in this one than the other one is that when she's just like she goes up to her friend, I forget the friend's name, but she goes up to her friend and says, I'm quitting my job, and not like walking in with a red dress and like quitting immediately, but I'm gonna wait, find another job, and then leave this one. And I was like, finally, a fucking reasonable like reaction. It's not somebody going from being a doctor to a what was it, like a pottery teacher or something
Yeah.
like that. And but like her growth is in her realization of what she needs out of her job and what she's getting out of it. And I thought that was some good, complex personal growth that somebody could spend their entire life running from something and using it to cover something up. And in covering up that thing, she was also covering up a piece of herself that she wasn't a lot like she was relying too heavily on something she thought was the important thing when it was something else. And I like realizations like that because it does take depth. It takes like insightfulness from the character, and they built a character who had the capacity to be insightful, which was nice. As far as Alex's growth, his was the one I'm disappointed in because I don't like the ending. I personally, I don't like that they got together. I really don't. And it was because it undermined all of Alex's growth. Like he sets boundaries at the end, but like the end again felt a little rushed, and it undercut his growth of like realizing what he needed and how he needed to. It's I'm not saying it's not possible to do. I just like he talks about all of this stuff that he needs out of the relationship. He sets some good boundaries at the end, and it feels a little bit forced because I don't think we get enough of his perspective, like with his life back in Ohio. We get a lot of it, but I think there's just I really, and this is on me, I had trouble articulating what I felt was missing, but it felt like there was a missing piece with him that there didn't for Poppy. And until that missing piece was found, them getting together didn't feel right to me personally.
I'm gonna disagree with you about his growth,
Fair
and I'll
enough.
tell you why.
Fair enough. Lay it on me.
I'm glad you think it's fair for me to have my own opinion.
No,
So
we
for me,
like dissent here. This is the conversation.
for me, there were two different points where growth started for them. Alex's growth started way far before Poppy's, in my opinion. He started separating his need for Poppy from his life way earlier in the story, where Poppy had like a Alex centric lifestyle right up until the end, where she was like, "Oh, my entire life revolves around these summer trips with Alex. Like, my job is about trips. My entire desire is to go on these trips with Alex. And even in my dating life, I'm only going to date guys who are okay with me going on these trips with Alex. Like, it's something where she is so focused on Alex that she is stunted in growth. Where Alex starts to open up his life to alternate possibilities. We see early on when he starts dating that one chick that works at the same school as him.
Sarah, I think, right? Or
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
Something like
and
that.
something like that. Some nobodies.
Wow.
um,
Oh,
he started.
yeah, Sarah, that's the on and off girlfriend.
Yeah, he started dating her, and she was like, "I'm not cool with you and Poppy's trip." And at first, he was kind of like, "Okay, I get it." And he was kind of in a denial phase where he was, doing the shitty sneak around thing where he talked to her while he was driving to the gym
Hmm.
and stuff like that. But then I think the turning point for Alex's growth was when he got back together with that girl and was straight up front and honest and started setting boundaries with Poppy and kept to them and started, experiencing the life that he wanted to do instead of the life that Poppy wanted him to do.
Hmm.
He still went on the trip, but the girlfriend was very much aware of the trip and what was going on. And he talked to her all the time. And, he stopped sneaking around with chatting with Poppy and stuff. Um, all the way up until the point where he was considering marrying this girl because he wanted to move his life along.
Yeah.
And then, he ended up breaking up with her, and at that point, he still progressed in his life in a way that he wanted to progress with his school job and pursuing his desires and not just being like, "Hey, Poppy, I'm single. We can chat all the time again."
Uh, Honestly, between you and Vs Drake, you guys both gave a couple of things that kind of illustrate. Maybe I can give a more concrete example of what I felt kind of undermined his growth, because I agree with that. I absolutely agree that that's where his growth is. But I think that honestly, the best example of what I felt undercut that is that back alley vasectomy. Yeah, he was like super, he's like, well, it can be reversed, and I have like stuff, and I saved some just in case, like as one does. But that's absolutely some manic level shit right there. And the thing is like it's all just kind of summarized right at the end. And I get that you want a big climax, like that's kind of how it goes a little bit, but that stuff felt like it undermined all of that like kind of off-scene growth. And I also thought that his realization at the wedding, where he's just like, I need to see a therapist about why I can't be happy in front of my family. And I was just like, man, that was so big to throw in there right at the end. And I'm like, and I think I finally have identified what I had an issue with is that like that felt like a, I don't know, it felt like kind of like a last minute throw in to be like, aha, some more character growth to counteract the crazy shit that I made my character do. Um, it felt a little like just kind of shoved in at the end and wasn't my favorite part of that. But I do agree he does have a lot of like off screen growth, off screen or off page growth, where it's implied and absolutely has been happening for longer. I mean, yeah, VS Drake, it does provide a counterbalance, but I don't know that it is balanced for me personally. His character, I have some issues with that as like a fundamental thing. Uh, so why don't we do this as like our next topic? Is what did you think about the various character tropes that you saw? Or
Character tropes. Let's see here.
do you want me to give my example?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and give yours, and I'll think about mine.
Well, the reason why I don't think it is necessarily balanced is because for Alex, I think I think it's the trope that he starts out with that is the like, I'm the nice guy who doesn't know how hot he is, but secretly I have kind of a wild side that I only show one person. Only one person can know about this side of me. And that's why the thing at the end where they shove it in is like, oh, I can't be happy around my family. Yeah, traumatizing. Lost his mom, had to take care of his family, had to take care of his dad, be a dad to his siblings. All of that makes sense. And it just again like the fact but he's still like they it felt like all of that was in service to like how do I make this guy hot and mysterious but like the nice guy, but the nice guy who would never go after her but would also fulfill her wild fantasies. And like that is the shit that bothered me, and I was like, I actually felt myself liking Alex more and more as I went because of that long-term growth, as he had been doing that since the beginning. He was struggling with something, not sure whether to say anything, but he was actually, like you said, going out trying to live his life for himself to a degree, but he hadn't let go of his family. And like I wanted a little more depth from that, and it just kind of felt shoved in the background as a means for Poppy to get her realization, which felt more satisfying for her, but at the expense of Alex. So, like, I felt like her realization was handled better, but it was at his expense because he settled kind of back into that trope of like, oh, well, he was like, oh, well, I can't be happy around my family, so that explains all of my foibles and not the fact that I just needed character growth. Like, like I needed to like live my life because like I liked the way that it wasn't said out loud, and then they said that bit out loud at the end as if like he had to have that because she had her big thing, and I didn't think they needed to necessarily do that, or that the author necessarily needed to do that, because I thought it kind of like undermined his growth for the sake of like propping up her realization of like, ho ho ho, he's also the man who's willing to go to therapy. That makes him even hotter.
Yeah. VS Drake's talking about Alex being a secondary character. I think
Yes.
that's kind of important to how he shows up too. Is this is really Poppy's story. Alex is a big part of it, which is why he kind of feels like a main character. But in
Hmm.
reality, he is definitely a second level character.
I agree. Absolutely. I mean, obviously, it's from Poppy's POV, so she's the
Yeah,
protagonist. He's a deuteragonist at best. Um, and yeah, with that context, I will say this: he is the better version of that trope compared to what's his face from Happy Place, because that guy took the trope on a whole other level. Um, oh yeah,
yeah.
Twilight.
For tropes for me, obviously the book is centralized around friends falling in love, long-term friends falling in love. Like the book doesn't exist without that trope.
Mhm.
So we'll ignore that for the sake of the fact that the book wouldn't exist without it.
Oh, I actually didn't want to
But
ignore that, but go ahead.
well, ignore that as like I didn't have a problem with it because
Oh, okay. It wasn't
how
a
do you have
trope.
a book without it?
The difference between a trope and a conceit, you know?
Yeah. I definitely agree with what Via Drake said about the not telling your feelings trope. It's f that trope. Um, Again, though, the book wouldn't exist without it. I think I think the big problem with that trope though is like how do you have what happened on the 2 years ago trip happen and then just be like, oh, I'm not going to talk about it. Let's just never bring it up again.
um,
Your friendship is pivotal to my life, and I'm not going to bring it up ever again. I'd
yeah,
rather lose it.
yeah. And that's something that I have kind of been in that situation where I've had a friend that I had like feelings for. So I get that it's complicated, but absolutely between what you said, Adam, and VS Drake saying that it's lazy, like communicating that stuff is hard. But the way this entire book builds up how important their friendship is to each other, the fact that they just don't talk about it for 2 years is wild to me.
Yeah.
And
And then
yeah,
she just
if
sends him a yo, you up text, and he's like, yeah, I'm up.
at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right, BS Drake. Is they spend the whole book telling each other stuff that they tell nobody else, talking about this stuff, and then just not. And the thing is if you want to draw boundaries, talk about them. In fact, a lot of people do. And yeah, some people fall off the face of the earth with each other after something happens that changes the dynamic of the relationship. That does absolutely happen, but for it just didn't feel supported by the relationship they had leading up to that point for them to just not talk about it, other than the fact that they constantly pull a we don't talk about Bruno with the whole Croatia trip. Like that's it. It's like boom. We don't talk about.
All right. I got another topic. It's probably going to be my last topic of the night. Um, I want to talk about the ending, specifically the part where Alex gets pissed at Poppy for not thinking through things when they sleep together. Do you think Alex was right that Poppy was being selfish, not to think ahead? Or do you think it was fair for Poppy to just go with the flow of what was happening in the moment?
I think it is fair for him to say, I don't like that that was the case. I don't think it was fair for him to say you shouldn't have done that because he got caught up in it too. Like, and he hadn't expressed any of his feelings to her beyond this chemistry that they just decided to lean into. If you needed to have it talked about, talk about it. That wasn't fair of him. However, it is fair of him to feel hurt by the fact that she hadn't thought about that because it's something important to him. And that's like two disparate ways of thinking, but it's on him for not bringing it up as being important.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think if it was that important to him that Poppy has the right motivations behind it, he should have stopped her in the moment and been like, "What does this mean for us moving forward?"
Yeah,
Like
but
he was just as willing as her to go with the flow in the moment because, he thought about it. He knew what he wanted, but he didn't know what she wanted.
exactly, like you got to take responsibility for your piece in it, which was another bit that I felt kind of like undermined his character growth. Like I think I'm picking up as we're talking little pieces of what I felt like undermined his character growth because like I think that's the kind of thing that does prop Poppy up as the more main character because otherwise I probably would have turned it into the Alex Nilsson show, you know. um,
Yeah, I agree. But like back to what I thought was Alex's shining show of change was that he was Alex central for growth. And I think this event shows that off a little bit where he thought his side of things and just kind of assumed Poppy's side of things is like he was so focused on himself. And that would be something that if there was ever a sequel, we could see more Alex growth in him looking beyond himself and focusing on others.
well, that's the thing though is like he spends the whole book thinking about others, but those others are his family at all times, and I think he does in that moment he becomes a little selfish, yes, but that's out of character for him. And like you said, I think it would be fun to see how he interacts with the world as a whole now that he does know how to balance himself and other people or is learning how to. But for
So
we're
that's
talking
that's what
hypotheticals.
that's what I defined as his change as he started thinking only about others and sacrificing his entire well-being for other people. And as he started to change, he said, I'm going to focus on myself. And to continue that, he needs to go, okay, I've focused on myself. I now need to work on
Oh, okay.
integrating my needs with others' needs.
Oh, to continue, I was in past tense. You were in future tense. That's my bad. You're absolutely right. I can see that point entirely. Um, so, uh, we've talked a lot about the main characters. Were there any supporting characters, whether they be people on the vacations, the boss, the best friend? Were there any supporting characters that stood out to you and why?
um, I think I think there were a lot of really in and out characters in this one. The only character that really stuck around for more than one season of the Alex and Poppy show was the one chick that they ended up randomly running into on one of their vacations. I think it was like the Colorado vacation or something. They ran into the chick who was at the um, vagrant house. That's what I called it in my head.
You're talking about that house up in Vancouver, like British Columbia or whatever that they went to, where it was that they went to on a boat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
that.
party house.
Yeah,
I liked her reappearance because it kind of like set a timeline in your mind of how people changed outside of the Alex and Poppy show.
absolutely. Yeah, like BS Drake said, a great callback sets it sets like it kind of gives you perspective. It gives you like a much needed outside perspective outside of essentially those two people. Is
Yeah,
that
I like that terminology. Anchor in the timeline.
yeah, absolutely. It that was one of my big ones. And did you have any others that stood out for you?
That was mine. Yeah.
Um, honestly, I genuinely liked the boss. Was it Swapna? Because she she could have easily been a trope of some kind, but she's like actually like a supportive boss who's also driven, who believes in the main character and is willing to call her out on stuff. Like there's a healthy working relationship in a book. My God. Like honestly, super refreshing in a book that's filled with drama, you know? Very real and professional person. And I appreciated that kind of character being in the book because it kind of made things feel a lot more grounded and
Yeah.
realistic. Is that even, I thought she was a very solid character. Didn't do a ton, but um, always had something to contribute to the story. As far as people on vacation that stood out to me, uh, honestly, I thought it was kind of funny with the couple that they meet on the
Oh, yeah.
wedding vacation, where they're just like they happen to hop into the same cabin, and they wind up in the same place, and she's just like, "I'm just lucky." um, and uh, I thought they were just. I thought they lent a little bit of extra humor, which was nice. Like I actually chuckled at the fact that they're like, we heard noises and figured it was you. Here's a nice couples thing you can do. I actually laughed out loud at that point, so it stood out to me.
Fucking dating the book though. Here's a Groupon.
Yeah, that was the most Midwestern thing possible, BS Drake. Absolutely.
Oh.
Oh. Oh man. That first guy, I think his name was like Ty or something like that, the boat captain or whatever. I think he was kind of a misdirect, but like at he has kind of a funny story as being like the boat captain who picked him up at his grandma's like old folks retirement home thing and took him somewhere cool, which is for me kind of interesting because I had a kind of similar vagrant house experience when I went to British Columbia. So that sort of thing does exist out there. So that's why it stood out to me, is because like that character is like, I've met that character, that he exists. Like I don't, he's probably not called Ty, but like that character exists in British Columbia. Well, maybe
Right.
not anymore with the housing prices, but like
Alexis Emily.
no. Far from it. I wish, honestly. It sounds like she sells a lot of books. I could use that
you
income.
know, V.S. Drake makes a good point. I've never seen you in the same room as Emily Henry.
You never see me in the same room with Brandon Sanderson either.
Oh my God, you're Brandon Sanderson.
Just saying the logic. Oh man.
Can you put me in Stormlight 6? All right, let's talk final thoughts. Unless you had another hot topic you wanted to get in there real quick.
I think there was one thing that I did want to talk about as far as the overall lesson. Well, we never talked about Croatia. We saved it for the very end. I want to talk about the Croatia scene. how do you feel that scene fit in once you finally read it? Do you feel like it did what it needed to? Like, how do you feel like it fit, like that final culmination, that scene fit into the book?
Sorry, what scene?
The Croatia, when you finally see the Croatia vacation, how do you feel like the Croatia vacation fit into the book when we finally got that pivotal scene?
Okay. So I so obviously by that point we figured out what was going on, what had happened before. We had strong intentional thoughts that they probably had a little bit of a crossed the line into the other territory. Um, honestly, I've been pretty drunk before. Like I've been as close to blackout drunk as possible without blacking out. And I gotta say, like, yeah, at least Poppy was. Um, sorry, I was answering via Strake's
Yes, they were drunk.
message.
They did it, and they were drunk.
Like they they knew they had to on some level know what they were doing to their friendship. And like I feel like in reality they probably would have stopped for a second, been like, "Are you sure?" and avoided the whole catastrophe.
Yeah, I didn't mind that it was like that something happened. I just didn't expect, but for it to go, like you said, as far as it did, felt like, okay, there's some self-sabotaging going on. Um, I do like that Alex took that time to step away and be like, okay, this happened, and something I need to work on some stuff with me before I can, before I can take that on. But again, with the lack of communication about it, like he didn't say anything. He just dropped off the face of the earth, and he's like, "Well, you didn't reach out either." Like, bullshit excuse, man.
Yes.
Like, yeah. And then the Poppy's like selfishness does kick in pretty hard, and uh, honestly, her realize like she becomes self-aware of that fact though, and that's one of the reasons why I like her character growth. But like the Croatia bit a it fell a little flat for me because I'm like, this was your main point of tension that you put at the beginning, and it didn't feel like it provided that much emotional oomph. It was just like, okay, it's the thing we figured happened, and it's supposedly the reason why they didn't talk, with when, if anything, it should have prompted them to talk even more. Like,
Yeah.
it felt like it kind of undermined like what we got out of like all the other vacations. To go back to what VS Drake said at the very beginning, and and what you were talking about at the very beginning, Adam, is that the trip, like the two main trips that where we get to kind of see what they're really feeling about each other, are the Palm Springs and the couples vacation one. Those feel like they do so much more for that dynamic than this like mystical Croatia trip. So that it felt kind of like we got the climax in other spaces, and it kind of undercut the Croatia trip a little bit for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Should have happened earlier. Or, at least in context. Because, like, that was the only bit of the structure, and I didn't want to talk about it earlier. That was the only bit of the structure that I didn't like, is that Croatia was placed in a part where its emotional poignance had already been essentially undermined and taken by other scenes.
All right, what were your final thoughts?
Overall, this is definitely a good beach read for sure. Like, not a huge amount of stakes. There's some fun characters, some fun stories, some very, very tropey, but decent characters, like reasonably compelling. I thought it was like a decently entertaining read. I didn't have as much trouble getting through it as I did the last one. Uh, like I don't think it asks a lot of the reader, but like I said, fun read, and I'd recommend it to somebody who wants like a light, relatively tame romance to read on vacation.
Yeah, I agree. It was a nice and light book. It was a quick and easy book to get through. It was entertaining throughout. Emily Henry's voice is really relaxing. It's a really nice voice for a book that isn't too serious. And this book is a good reminder to those out there to keep the communication alive.
Yeah, we are not therapists, but yeah, we can still learn from books. V.S. Drake said, not a big book, good vacation book, solid story, but don't look too hard at it. Characters are relatable. And amen, V.S. Drake, talk to people. You know, I get like if we're comparing it to reality, yeah, it is tough, but it is stuff that if you want relationships to work, you got to talk it out. And ironically, like communication is key is a a very common turn of phrase, but yeah, it's still communication is still underrated. All right, with that, why don't we wrap things up then?
Sure thing. Next up, we've got August 24th. We're going to be reading A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. It's a repeat author for us. Excited to see what else she has for us to enjoy. After that is October 5th, a long turnover, which is good because we'll be reading Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. It's a little bit longer book, so it's good that.
Well, that's for September, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, did I lose you? Can anybody hear me?
No, I can hear you. Yep.
Awesome. All right. So, just to correct that, we are reading The Deadly Education, yes, in August, but Twilight is for September. October is going to be our...
yeah, oh. Alex.
Yeah.
Our September date is October 5th.
Oh, my apologies right there. Yep. I thought, well, that's, I think, what comes from me hearing only bits and pieces. All I heard was Twilight in October. So my apologies for the unnecessary correction.
You're good. We're good.
All right, but oh, go ahead.
After that is my favorite time of the year, which is Sanderson time. It's not every year, but Wind and Truth, Book 5 of the Stormlight Archive comes out in December. To celebrate that, we're going to be taking some time off to reread the other 4 books. We'll still be on the show, and we'll have some dates coming for you in future sessions, but we're going to be talking Sanderson for a little bit here. I'm super stoked, super excited for my reread. Can't wait for Wind and Truth. I can't remember anticipating a book this much since Rhythm of War. Just kidding. Since Harry Potter 7, I think, is the last time I've been this excited for a book to come out. So excited.
Yeah, I think we're all there with you, Adam. Like hard not to get stoked for like that big of a release, especially as I don't know if anybody else has been following. So why don't we get into our quick side piece section, because for my side pieces, if you've been following along with this, I have been rereading all of the Stormlight Archive books. Yeah, I think I finished the Rhythm of War back in May, I believe, April or May, somewhere around there. So but for this time, I finally got into uh, a couple of extra books. I mean, shout out also to Dimension 20 again. I've been into this their last couple series as well, but um, I finally started reading the Legends and Lattes series as a part of that as well. Just like going heavy on the D&D stuff this time around. Honestly, very fun read. It's like it's if like the lo-fi beats to study to, or like if lo-fi beats to study to was a book, but for like it's like lo-fi D&D beats to study to if it was a book series. And like it's just very chill. I'd highly recommend it to any nerds out there, like that series to any nerds out there. What about side pieces for you, Adam? Any?
I managed to get back into the swing of things a little bit. I jumped back into the Wheel of Time, finished book 2. I'm on book 3.
Nice. Oh yeah, that's
I
right. I
am
finished book 3 as well.
I also started White Sands, which is a Brandon Sanderson graphic novel. So a bit of a different read for me. I do read some manga every now and again, but the graphic novels are not my norm. It's an interesting experience to say the least.
Yeah, graphic novels have their own vibe to them for sure. So I'll be interested to see, like, talk with you more about that personally. And if you want to have those kinds of chats, uh, why don't you come on down to our socials, hit us up, and get our Discord because we talk about all that sort of stuff and more. Also, I know we are leaning heavily into Sanderson, but we also may have some stuff on the horizon, a little stuff for our Patreon people. We've been looking into local authors to potentially do a little blurb on, so you may or may not see that coming up. Look forward to that. And unless you have something else, Adam, I think that wraps us up for the evening.
Yeah, I think that's everything.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. Love chatting with you as always, and we'll see you next book.
Yeah, thanks everybody. V.S. Drake, welcome to the show.
As always.
Yeah. See you guys. See you next
All
book.
right. Bye.